5 o'clock Central, 6 o'clock Eastern. Tech Talk Tuesday, number 178, you guys. Merry Christmas is over. We have 52 Tech Talk Tuesdays to do before Christmas. So think about that, you guys. We're just coming up on 3.5 years of doing this every week. Hey, Carlos and Bruno, I just want to tell you that before we have Christmas again, it will be 52 more. What will that be? Woo, that's going to be a lot of Tech Talks. Anyway, we remembered the reason for the season, and we made it. I think next week's Tech Talk Tuesday will be next year. Hey, Steven. Hey, Scott. Kevin, how y'all doing? Thank you very much for the Merry Christmas. I got a few things. I sent out a Facebook message a little while ago, about an hour ago, and asked people for some ideas, and I got several. I think I got about 20-something of them pretty quick. And I picked out a few that I'd like to just touch up on real quick. But listen, you guys, when you send me suggestions like that, it's absolutely awesome because, hey, Ron, hey, Ed, Alex, Paul, Harvey, I see some folks on here, you almost be bored to watch me. Hey, Chris. Yes, it was all good. We had a great Christmas, and thank you for offering to help, too, with my little projects over here. But the ice and the snow and the cold got this old man sitting by the heater. Yep. The weather outside was frightful, but the heater on the inside was delightful. And I had nowhere to go, so I said, let it snow, and it did for 2 days. Anyway, I heard that was a song. I didn't ever really learn it, but there's Ronnie and Theodore, man. Terrence, how y'all? Barry, thank y'all for coming in and looking. I got some questions people ask me about. How do you tell when you're getting the right info out of the dyno? I'm going to talk about that real quick. Air fuel ratios, how and why and what. EFI versus carburetors is a really great discussion here. Overlap a little bit about that. And then squish, band, and quench area. Those are some good ones to talk about. Hey, Charles. Hey, Lowry. Profit. Boy, look at that. Cash, Profit, Bryce. I like those names. I like Cash, I like Bryce, and I like Profit. You guys got it going on with those names right there. Hey, Ronnie, happy holidays. Larry, yep. Cash, Profit, and Bryce. Man, that's some good names for some grandbabies, ain't it? We don't have any coming yet, but it's all right to talk about. So how was everybody Christmas? Christmas was good, I hope. Hope everybody did good. I know we got cold here. Can y'all hear me good coming through here? All right, I'm going to flip over and let you see me this year right quick. Let's see here. I won't keep you on this version long. I'll slip us back to the board, but I want to say hi in person. I know I didn't show my face last week, and every week I do this, I get older and older. I look back 170-something Tech Talk Tuesdays ago, and I was still old. So I don't see it changing for the better. So I'm just going to get old, get graceful with my age. Here's my bike. Y'all heard me talk about Blue 5.0. It really is getting close. My wheel's getting painted tonight. The black powder coat on the back wheel. I'm working on the pipes tomorrow. We got the heads and rock arms in, and I wanted to tell you I really am doing, really and truly, doing stock rock arms. I know people are like fussing at me about it, but yeah, these are the stock rockers. I really am running those. And I really am running the stock plate, and I really am running the stock lifters. And I'm going to run horribly these adjustable push rods for now. But I will. It's a test, everybody. It is a test. It is. I'm not building this to be the want list of everybody that's building a Harley. I'm not building this bike to be what everybody wished they bought off the internet or off what they bought at their hot rod shop. I'm doing a test, my very, very own test. When people asked me to build their bikes for them back before I retired, they would tell me I want this and this and this, and that's fine. But this is mine, so I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. I studied all the ratios inside of the rocker ratios. I've studied all the ratios about the supply and the scavenge in the oil pump, and I got the one I want. I'm learning about it. I'm going to learn about it. And when this fails, if this runs really bad and something breaks or it sprays oil everywhere or something goes wrong, it's my fault. Not all you people on here with all your names scrolling up here that told me what to do. You should have done this, should have done this, should have done this. That's okay. I'm all right with that. But you got to understand, man, that's the only way I learn. The only way I learn. I ran over so many parts in my career. My shop is still full of stuff I ran over. But look, we're going to go here now. We're going to go here now. And I want to tell you one thing real quick about rock arms. This is a roller-tipped rock arm from S&S. S&S, roller rock. They call it a roller rocker, but it's not. It is a torsion bar that twists. This bar twists here when the push rod tries to go up and this roller tip tries to push the valve open, and I'll show you how that works in a minute. But if this was a real roller rock arm, it would have rollers here, not a bushing. So this is just like a stock rock arm. Matter of fact, here's a stock rock arm. They both have bushings. They say this is a roller rock arm, and they say this is a stock rock arm. Well, this one came in the bike. This one came from S&S. And the only thing I see roller about it is it has this little tip here. And this is the funny part about this when it goes up and down, y'all. I want you to see if you can see this wheel. Look how much it rolls. When this valve goes down, and this valve goes up, and this valve goes down, this valve goes up. Sorry for hitting the stalk there. But this doesn't roll. I mean, it turns. It turns about, when it goes down for like 600 lift and comes back up, goes down for 600 lift, it turns about 1/8 of a turn. So there's not some kind of spinning wheel going on here like a skateboard. This is, if it's under pressure with a hydraulic lifter, this is always under tension. There's no lash. This isn't banging. This is just sitting on the valve. And when the push rod comes up and pushes the valve down, and the push rod comes up and pushes the valve down, this little wheel here, if it turns this much, it's a lot. Okay, well, why does it wear all the way around? Well, it does a lot of hopping and leaping and jumping, but so does a stock. Here's a Milwaukee 8 with a stock rock arm in it. I'm going to lower this down, and I'm going to line up with this, and I'm going to show you how much rubbing that everybody's trying to get rid of by putting a roller tip in here. Let me let it down just a little bit more so we can see under here. This is just for clarification purposes. I mean, it's all right. Everybody has their own opinion. When that valve opens, that's as much as a valve can open. It's about 600 lift right there is all it's got. About 600. This has got 10,000 miles on it. That's the most wear it's gotten. I'm going to put a little bit more lift in it, so it's going to pivot off of it a little bit more. But we'll be going from 400 lift to 600 lift, something like that. So it's not really a lot. But I just wanted to share that with you guys because we have this big misunderstanding that there's some friction advantage. But the roller tip is not where the friction advantage comes from when we do a really nice roller rocker. And this is not a roller rocker. This is a roller tip rocker. And it sounds like a broken record if you just clicked in. I just want you to know this only turns this much when it goes through a stroke. All right, I'm through with that for a little bit. Now, you can argue with me about that later, but that's what I'm seeing when I build one of these engines. All right, next thing. The dyno truth. All right, folks ask me all the time and said, well, that one made 150 on that dyno, makes 145 on that dyno, makes 300 on that dyno, 600 on that dyno. But listen, the truth of a dyno is when I had 3 dynos when I closed my store. I I had a chassis dyno and 2 engine dynos. And when you make a pull and the curve looks like this, and then you make another pull and the curve looks like this, and then you make another pull and the curve looks like this, and then you make another pull and the curve looks like this, and then you make another pull and the curve looks like this, that's giving you the truth, in my opinion. And if you correct it to the weather accurately, where you have the barometer that moment, the temperature and the humidity that moment, you'll have a correction factor. It might be 1.05. And if it's really cold outside, the what they call uncorrected horsepower, it might look like this. And if it's in the summertime and it's really hot and the barometer is really low, this curve might look like this. Does this make sense to anybody? Corrected, uncorrected, uncorrected hot, uncorrected cold, corrected. Now, this is what I learned about the dyno, is if I am here on a day, any day, and it's 80 degrees and it is 30%, and the barometer is, I'm just going to pull some numbers out of my head, 2965. I'm going to say that'll give us about 1.05. Could be 104, could be 106, but I'm guessing because I've done it for a long, long time. But that correction factor right there, your dynamometer only knows, anybody's dynamometer only knows what is happening. If it's a rear wheel dyno, it takes the weight of the drum, how fast it spins up, and how many RPM it spins up, and how long it takes to spin it up, gives us a curve. It looks like that, what I was saying. That's what our curve looks like. Now, if I put this motorcycle or this engine on the shelf like I did the Winston bike, and I don't ever touch it again, and I come back a year later and I dyno it again, and I corrected dyno sheet looks the same like that, that means I was doing a good job with my dyno. Here's another thing that happens with dynos. If you put your motorcycle on a guy's dyno and you dyno and it does this, and then the next run 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 it does that, but he made no changes. You shouldn't do any tuning. You shouldn't do, unless it's air fuel ratio is really wrong, timing's really wrong, and you should make some little changes to go through it, but only to save the engine. But if you are trying to find out the truth, this is how I do it. I make an A, I'll make a B, and I'll make a C pull. 3 in a row without any changes. It'll have this curve, and then it'll have this curve, and then it'll have this curve, and they'll all be the same. And then, only then, maybe I'll take the exhaust pipe off and put another pipe on, and the next pipe put on it. Once I get it tuned right, it may look like this. And then we'll say, wow, look at there, it picked up early RPM, it picked up here, it stayed the same at the top. That's the dyno truth to me. People say all the time, well, what do you do about the dyno? How do you make the dyno give you the truth? Well, first of all, you have to be objective. You use it as a tool. You can use a 13 millimeter wrench to take a ½ inch off, but if you're wanting to really work accurately, make sure you use, if you're torquing something, make sure you use the same torque wrench, same oil, same lube, and you duplicate the situation every time you dyno. Same air pressure, same temperature on the cylinder head, same temperature on the oil, same air temperature, best you can. And then if that's not good enough, then you have to rely on the correction factors that are figured in, that the whole world uses. Everybody in the world has a dyno uses a correction factor. Now, when I raced Pro Stock forever, for a long, long time I raced Pro Stock, and we would dyno in the wintertime, and we would always make the most power we ever had. And we would dyno in the summertime, we always made the least power we ever have. But what we did, hey John, hey Ethan, that's a good old name right there, John. And what we would find out was the weather was just conducive to more air going in and more fuel and less timing, and it would make a better horsepower curve. Summertime, low barometer, high humidity, high temperature, just wasn't enough power available, not enough good air to make good horsepower. So we would tune best we could. We'd put a degree of timing in it. We would lean it out. We would change everything we could to try and get back to where we were corrected. But problem is, there just wasn't enough to go around. So It's really scary if you're going to run when it's, say 0 correction factor and use that as your benchmark, and then go, say, summertime where it's 110 correction factor. You can do all you can. Even at the drag strip, we do all we can to go the fastest we can in Indy as we did in Gainesville. Gainesville, early in the year in Gator Nationals, it might have been really high barometer and really cool out, and you could get some good performance. And if you go to Denver, we're down 20% because there's less dents in the air. So as far as telling the truth, it's got to be repeatable. I think that's the number one word, is it has to be repeatable. If your dyno or the dyno you're working with can't do the same thing 3 runs in a row, I wouldn't use it to learn from. If you just want to go like you're going to the beach, or you go to a rally and they throw your bike up there and make 2 hits for $100 and it says that you made 121 horsepower, well, that's good. You probably rode up there. It's probably hot. It might be cold because you've been waiting in line for a long time. Who knows? But it's not how you learn to tune your engine. The way you tune your engine is you make all the conditions the same as you can. You make, like I said, the air pressure changes a lot. I've seen 20 horsepower by having a flat tire on the back. Put 40 pounds of air in the back tire and it makes 130 horsepower, and you let it down to 5 pounds, makes 110 horsepower. I mean, there's so many ways to do it. I'm just saying, that's how I do it. Air-fuel ratios. Somebody says, how do you know the correct air-fuel ratio? Well, when I go to the drag strip and I get the most MPH at the finish line, and I have the air-fuel ratio, let's just call a number. I say I have it at 12.5 to 1 air-fuel, and then I change it to, and this is say 100, and I change it to 12.8, and it goes 102. $12.5 didn't have as much power as 12.8 because I went more mile an hour. What if it was backwards, you guys? What if 12.5 made 102 and 12.8 made 100? Well, then you would say, well, 12.5 is better than 12.8. That's why a wideband or an O2 sensor is only a ruler. It is just like pulling a tape measure out there and saying what it is. What do you want it to be? Do you want it to be the fastest it can be, or do you want the air-fuel ratio to be 13.2 to 1? What's your goal? When I dyno, my goal is not to be 13.2 to 1. My goal is for it to run the best, make the most power. So I adjust the air-fuel ratio up and down till it makes the most power. Sometimes it's 12.8. Sometimes it's 13.5. But it's almost always between 12.8 and 13.5. That's a sorry 13. It's almost always between 12.8 and 13.5 to 1 with gasoline. E85, methanol, nitro, all them other oxygenated fuels, that's another story. But there's nothing correct about air fuel unless it makes the most power. Now, if you go to a tuner or a dyno guy that's married to air fuel ratios and he has his number, my dyno says, my wideband say, my air fuel ratio meter says 13.2 to 1 is the best. Well, he's got his blinders on just like a racehorse. He's looking down the pipe. What if it made 10 more horsepower if this was not his favorite air-fuel ratio? Yeah, I read where a guy's talking about his dyno couldn't keep up. Yeah, well, you got to do something different there. Go to the track and find out how fast it'll go, and you can tune it there. Boy, if a track can't keep up, that's when you're really going fast. I've seen those happen before. But anyway, my favorite air-fuel ratio is when the engine is the happiest, and I've never seen an untuned, poorly tuned engine happy. When my air fuel's right, my ignition timing's right, the engine doesn't overheat, it really rips, it makes good power everywhere. That's when this is correct. EFI versus carburetors. This is a big story. I grew up tuning carburetors and racing carburetors, and I learned how to make my car and my motorcycle go really fast with my carburetors. Then when I got EFI, all I saw was wires, sensors, laptops, PCs, computers, keys to tap. I didn't have to have a screwdriver or a pair of pliers hardly anymore. The laptop or this cell phone that I'm talking on right here ended up being the tuning device. But when you're tuning with your cell phone, you're really using a screwdriver and a pair of pliers to adjust the EFI to get the air-fuel ratios and the performance you want on the dyno. EFI now, what we've got going on with these, the carburetors, we have fuel inside the carburetor, and we're trying to create a pressure differential when the air comes through the carburetor and make it pull fuel out of the bowl. This, we stick injectors right in the manifold, and we point them right at the valve. When this is sitting on the engine, this is spraying gasoline on the back of the valve. So we don't need velocity to make fuel go in here. I've got this going in at 45 PSI. If you ever turn one of these on at 45 PSI and watch this, it is spraying some liquid, you guys. Matter of fact, about 13 times air plus is 13 parts air and 1 part fuel coming through here is a lot of fuel. And it makes 13-to-1 air fuel. So I get whatever comes through here, 13 times of it needs to be the air and 1 time of it needs to be the fuel. And that's the ratio of 13-to-1. That's what AF stands for, air to fuel. And this right here is a perfect picture of air to fuel. This is how much air is coming in the head, and this is how much fuel comes in. And it should be around 13-to-1 if it's gasoline, somewhere near that. I'm not saying that's the only way to go. But when we put a carburetor on there, we have to create a venturi. We have to have a way for the air pressure to change and the velocity to change to pull fuel, create a pressure differential between inside the bowl and inside the manifold or the carburetor, so the fuel would run out of the bowl and go into the engine. And let me tell you about gasoline. I'll move this over right here so I can draw a little quick picture. Looking at the top of a Harley engine with a carburetor, an intake manifold, and then an intake port, the front one. Hold on, quit waving around. Left-handed. There is the intake. Here's the intake valve, and then over here is intake valve. So when the piston goes down on this cylinder and the piston goes down on this cylinder, creates a huge pressure differential inside the cylinder. So the atmosphere out here, God's barometer, 2990, 2960, fills this up as fast as it can to go in when this valve opens. All right, the carburetor has a little venturi right here that pulls the fuel out of the bowl and makes the fuel go in here and run. But guess what, y'all? Gasoline does not like to turn corners. Air will turn this corner. Gasoline's got inertia, and it wants to hit this wall. And it does not follow the air like we think it does. I'm going to draw an upside down intake manifold. Here we go. There's where the valve goes. And we got a carburetor on here. Got a carburetor on here. And here's the venturi. The discharge nozzle. Here's the venturi and the carburetor. And when this air comes through here, it has really low pressure here, and the barometer gets in the bowl through the vents and pushes this fuel out, and it comes in here. But it doesn't like to turn. If you've ever got a cylinder head on a flow bench and open the valve and you get you a spray dicom back at the carburetor and squirt it, it doesn't even think or see the short turn. It just sprays the cylinder wall over here. Gasoline wants to go straight. Air don't mind turning. So when the fuel injection guys came out, this nozzle placement got really big right here. This was important for us. So now we've got the nozzle here, and we're spraying the fuel here. So spraying the fuel right in the valve, when the valve is open, we're putting fuel right in the cylinder. And then it might have a cone shape to it. So we're really filling the cylinder with fuel. And it's easy to say, I don't want any fuel right now, turn the injector off. It's electric. It's got a little electric coils in there, and you turn them on and off, and it opens and closes, opens and closes. And it doesn't care what the engine velocity is. You can have the throttle shut with no velocity and make this spray 40, 50, 100 PSI in here and fill this up. A carburetor, no fuel will go in it unless the cylinder demands it. The piston goes down, it says pressure's low here, high pressure here, the fuel comes in, goes in the cylinder. So it changed our life. The carburetors changed our life. It made us make really strange intake ports that would help us do what they call atomize and go in here and let the fuel come in and go in here and go in here and go in here. We were trying to get the fuel to go in all these places. But the only way we could get it to do all that is to run it on a flow bench at really, really slow pressures, really low pressures, really slow speed. Where remember how many times I've told you guys this piston, even this Harley piston goes up and down 100 times a second at 6,000 RPM, 100 times a second. And the intake valve only opens 58 times a second at 6,000 RPM. So it only, every time the piston goes down, it asks for fuel out of the carburetor. Not with a fuel injector. Fuel injector sprays it in when you tell it to spray it in. It doesn't care if you have velocity. So guess what I learned since EFI came out is I learned to put a bigger valve in it and a bigger port. And I don't care the velocity in here. When this valve opens, barometer pushes this full. As soon as this valve opens, as soon as this piston goes down, this pressure differential here, you want this to fill up as fast as you can. I don't need a restriction. I don't need a push rod pinch. I don't need anything if I've got EFI right here. And it doesn't come on until I tell it to. This is just my opinion. Lots of folks want to argue about it, but I'm going to keep getting outrun my whole life as long as I keep thinking backwards, right? Or I'm going to outrun everybody if I keep thinking backwards. One of the two. But when I tell this to spray fuel, it sprays. And when I tell it to stop spraying fuel, it stops. This injector never asked how much velocity I had going on. All it wants to know is where the crankshaft is, and it wants to know where the camshaft is, and then I can go on my cell phone and say, wait till right here, when this piston's, right before this piston goes down, right before this valve opens, squirt this fuel, and squirt a lot. And when this piston goes to the bottom and comes back up, right when it starts coming to the top, turn this fuel off, and it stops. And I can do it 100 times a second. That's what the control we have with EFI over carburetor. So then you get to the racetrack with the fastest pro stock motorcycles fuel injected, and he goes a 680 at 200 miles an hour, and he's got Motec and throttle bodies on a Suzuki. And then you got a guy comes right behind him and goes a 680 at 200 miles an hour with carburetors. And they both have the same size engine, and they both have the same size throttle bodies. And one of them requires on pressure differential to make the fuel get out of the carburetor and get into the engine. And the other one takes an ECU and God's atmosphere to make the fuel go in the engine. And it's very baffling to EFI people to say there's no way a carburetor could do that. And it's very baffling for a carburetor guy to say there's no way EFI can do it. But at the end of the day, somebody asked me, how can you have a monster V-twin that has 160 cubic inches, turns 10,000 RPM, go a 680 at 200 miles an hour, and then you have 113 cubic inch V-twin, 113 cubic inch four-cylinder with carburetors on it, and goes a 680 at 200 miles an hour, and you also have 113 cubic inch four-cylinder, four-valve, that has fuel injection on it, just like the V-twin does with a Motec or whatever, or Max ECM, and it goes 680 at 200 miles an hour. It's because we got the amount of horsepower potential and the weights of the machines balanced out enough to where they run close together enough for it to be some good competition. I'm going to skip over overlap right now. I'm going to overlap right over it. And I'm going to tell you, people ask me all the time, what does Squish band do? Well, I got a piston here. Squish band, it's got kind of a bad name. It's this band around here, around the outside. It squishes, when the piston gets up to the head, it squishes all the air and fuel towards the center to create turbulence in the chamber right before plug lights. This is a squish band, and this is a squish band. And if you don't care about making the most horsepower you can get, you let this run pretty far away from the head so you don't activate the mixture motion that happens to help make everything get mixed up and burn really good. But it just made me look back at air fuel. So when you say it's 13 to 1, I got to tell you one thing about that. It's really, really cool. I had a smart man teach me this a long time ago. He told me, he said, you know what that means, George? He says, your average in here is, say, 13 to 1. He said, over here, it might be 16 to 1. Over here, it might be 15 to 1. Over here, it might be 10 to 1. Over here, it might be 12 to 1. But the average of this is 13-to-1 when you get it jetted right. There is so much inconsistency going on in the chamber that we have to do an average. So if we had a wideband sensor every couple of inches in here, we could learn how many of them are far away from perfect and how many of them are far away from being perfect, or some of them are not even close to being perfect. But this wipes off, so y'all don't freak out. I reckon this piston, look at there. I promise it does wipe off. Yes, it does. But back to the story is that when you try to get 13-to-1, that is a average of all the unhomogenized mixtures going on inside the chamber, because they're everywhere. Just like the exhaust pipe. When you get an EGT on the exhaust pipe way over here, you got an exhaust pipe coming out way over here, and you got a probe in here that tells you what the EGT is. That's not what the temperature is in here. That's what the temperature is in the pipe. And when it tells you that it's 1,500, 1,300, or 1,400 degrees, that is also an average of a signal coming from the probe that looks like this. And it averages whatever the reading is. Okay, mine's blown. I've talked enough. We got to leave room for Tech Talk 179. Thank you all for checking in. Please understand these are my opinions, and this is unscripted. I just ran off the cuff, so I'm sure I made a few mistakes. I'll review it. I will try and answer questions, but thank you all so much for checking in. I'm very thankful of you and the opportunity to share what I think I know based on all these 40-something years of blowing up and tearing up stuff. But may God bless y'all. Tune in next Tuesday for 2023 Tech Talk number 179. It'll be next year then. So I won't see you again till next year. May God bless.